Welcome to Built to Finish. I'm your host, Stephen Pivnik. Join me each week as we explore the journeys of audacious goal setters. This includes experienced founders, CEOs, and entrepreneurs sharing pivotal moments that propel their success. We'll also be talking with endurance athletes who push the limits of physical and mental ability. This show is brought to you by Acresis, offering tailored, high-impact advisory services to help founders get to their finish line with a strategic acquisition or majority investor recapitalization. Let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of Built to Finish. I am super excited to introduce today's guest. She's a motivational speaker and an Everest Summitter who enjoys challenging herself and inspiring others to achieve their goals. She has over 20 years of experience in channel sales and management as an expert strategist who delivers results, builds relationships, and drives innovation in the cybersecurity industry. She's an active member and board member of several industry associations and councils, including Channel Focus, Women's Leadership Council, and Channel Executive Council. She is the vice president of U.S. channel sales at Trend Micro. Louise McEvoy, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Stephen. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate the invite.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm so happy to be speaking with you. And from a totally selfish perspective, I mean, we have, several business topics to cover, which I can't wait to get into. But I also want to pick your brain as much as possible about Everest and for you to share that story. So I've got 1,000,001 questions and would love for you to share your experience with the audience.
Everest is my favorite topic. Let's talk about it. And I'm so excited that you're doing your Everest journey as well. Boy, I'll be following you for sure.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So I looked you up on the Himalayan Expeditions database. You are the 492nd woman, according to that database, to have summited Everest. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's quite an honor. I love everything of Everest, and being included on the Himalayan database is a real honor for anyone.
Agreed. I'm just curious, since I'm going through the Tibet side, through the China side, the north side. Do north side summiters get included in that database? Do you know?
They do. As long as it's an 8,000-meter peak, you'll be included on the Himalayan database.
Another reason to make it to the top. I want it memorialized in that database.
You will be. I have no doubt you'll make it to the summit.
Thank you. I appreciate the support. So tell me a little bit about your entire, mountaineering journey. How and when did you know that you love the mountains and you want to achieve these incredible goals of summiting 8,000-meter peaks?
It starts with a journey, and it's not like you wake up, it's not like I woke up one day saying, oh, there's Everest, I want to climb it. It started with some small things that led to that summit, and the journey for me took over 20 years. I moved countries. I moved from Canada to the US, and I was lonely because I didn't know anyone here. A friend of mine suggested I read a book about the 96 Everest disaster. It killed many people. And as tragic as that story was, what it did for me was it ignited a curiosity in me about mountaineering. I never thought I would climb Mount Everest, but I did commit to myself that I would see Mount Everest one day. And
Okay.
4 years later, I got laid off from my job. And what was, a really impactful moment actually changed my life. And I went online that night. I got a severance package. I had nowhere to go the next day. So I found an adventure company that was taking people to Everest Base Camp. And they had one spot left on the team out of 16, leaving in 2 weeks. I signed up, and 2 weeks later, I ended up in Kathmandu, and I had no idea that I'd be spending the next 3 weeks in a tent because I didn't know anything about this. I just signed up for it, the first time ever doing it. And, along the base camp trail, you eventually see Everest. And, I'd been reading about Everest for this 4 years since initially reading that book. And I was obsessed with Mount Everest. And when I saw Everest for the first time, it's such a beautiful mountain that I made a second promise to myself. And that promise was I was going to climb the mountain. And, it's not something you just say, okay, next year I'm going to climb it. I spent the next 14 years climbing all over the world, climbing the world's highest mountains. So name pretty much any mountain and I've probably climbed it. And what I wanted to do is build that muscle memory forever so that I could just climb Everest once. I knew I only had one shot at it. As you know, it's a lot of sacrifice, it's time,
Hmm.
money, it's, sacrifice from your family, it's risky. There's so much about it that makes it difficult. I knew I had one shot, so I made sure that I was most prepared for Everest, and I'm proud to say I made it on my first try. So it's a journey.
That's definitely a very long journey, and I commend you for taking that approach because a lot of people see something, as intense as that, and they say they want to do it tomorrow. And
Yeah.
there's just that shortened journey is filled with, so many injuries and so much heartbreak. And I just think the longer term approach of building that muscle memory, like you said, and training your mind and body for the massive project ahead is the right way to go.
It worked for me. Some people can just wake up and, the next year there's something else, but I think it is a riskier approach for not only them, but for their team and then everyone who's climbing around them because they just don't know how to react in certain situations. You do need to know, muscle memory, how to use an ice axe, how to climb on a rope, how to belay, how to use a crampons, how to be in situations that are really scary. And if you haven't been in those situations, then it's gonna be your first time and your first time experience. Some really, really challenging things on a mountain like Everest can be deadly for yourself and those around you, and that's not fair to anyone. I would make sure I was most prepared. Is your journey
Yeah,
that long or are you shortened?
it's definitely not shortened. I don't remember the exact year that I climbed my first mountain. My first climb was Mount Rainier in Washington State, which I believe is just over 14,000 if I'm not mistaken. And once I had that, full, um, experience because Mount Rainier is, I guess, I mean, it's not identical to the Himalayas, but it's, heavily glaciated, super cold, steep. You get a lot of, similar conditions. And, after I did it one time, I said, uh, I'm in love with mountaineering. I want to do much more of this, and obviously, I want to go, higher and experience other peaks. And once I started summiting some of the other 7 summits, Everest just naturally, fell onto the bucket list.
Yes. Yeah. Rainier is extremely good training for Everest. Yes. I can commend you for taking that challenge because it's a tough one.
It totally is, and, people ask me all the time, like, "How does one get to Everest?" And I said, one of the many, first steps is to go on a smaller mountain, and to really get a full-blown experience of what it may be like, I highly, highly suggest Rainier, and you're either gonna love it or you're gonna hate it, and I know people that have tried Rainier, did not make it to the top, and they just didn't appreciate the entire experience of, being cold, living in a tent, climbing on a rope, being in a dangerous situation, and that's totally fine if it's not for everybody.
Yeah. Talk about dangerous situations. When I did Rainier, my team, we had to run from an avalanche. I was on a
Oh, no.
rope team of 3. Yeah, and that avalanche came down, and it was like a freight train coming after us. It was pretty darn scary. Yeah, there's, a lot of risk with what we do.
100%, and, touch wood, I don't have, any avalanche stories. I do a lot of backcountry helicopter skiing as well, and I've climbed some of the other 7 summits, and we've seen avalanches, like, far, far away, but I've never been really close to one, and I hope that stays the same in my future.
Yeah, but when we climbed through the ice fall for the first time on Everest, and you won't have the ice fall because 'cause you're going through the north side, but on the south side, that Khumbu ice fall, which is the most dangerous part of the south side of Everest, our first time going through, we were on fixed lines and an avalanche came down. And there was nowhere to run because 'cause you're clipped in. And it was like thankfully, it was far enough away, but just that snow coming in your face and the roar of that mount oh, boy, it's a scary moment trying to hide, but you can't because 'cause you're on a fixed line and you don't wanna unclip because you don't wanna fall. Like, yeah, there's a lot that goes through your head in a very, very short period of time, and it's pretty scary.
Oh my god, you just gave me you just gave me chills. I'm so, so happy. I mean, a part of me really wants to experience the Khumbu Icefall one day,
Yeah.
but, first things first, I wanna get to the top first. So if and when I summit, not if, I'm gonna be super positive. When I summit and people are asking me like, "What are you gonna do next?" I think I'm gonna say, "You know what? I wanna try the south side," because it fascinates me. Even though it's super, super dangerous, it's just a fascinating route.
If I were to give, you didn't ask for advice, but if I was to give you advice, I would say don't project into the future that your next climb will be this. I would say enjoy this climb and absorb every single moment. And even though you're going to be there for 7 weeks, which is an enormous amount of time, it goes by so quickly. And I wish I enjoyed it more. I wish I absorbed it more. And, you know, if someone says, will you go back? Yes. And for me, it'll be the north side. But it's an incredible journey, and what an opportunity to be able to be able, not just physically, but just it costs a lot of money. It's a lot of time off work. It's a lot of time away from your family, but to have that freedom to do so is pretty darn incredible. So enjoy every second. I truly, truly hope it's magical for you.
No, that is great advice, and I was excited at the same time disappointed that we're gonna have full self-service at base camp and at advanced base camp. So
Yeah.
it's just gonna be, so tempting, to share this with everybody that I wanna share this with, but at the same time, I almost wish there was no service,
Yeah.
like a couple of times that I've been to Denali, there was no service, and that in and of itself was just such an incredible experience to be, completely disconnected.
And yeah, it does make a difference. I remember I tried Denali before and being 3 weeks unplugged, and you come back and the world has changed, and you didn't experience any of it, and it just sort of it's come and gone. And you're like, "Wow, I didn't realize that enormous event happened in the world, and it's over now." It's interesting to not be a part of that because you're so disconnected from everything. It's actually kind of a neat feeling. I kind of enjoyed it to be so disconnected.
One of the many reasons I wanna go back to Denali, other than the fact that I didn't summit, is to experience that disconnected feeling again for, I think it was like, 3 to 4 weeks.
Yes. Yes, it's an interesting experience on so many levels. I agree.
Yeah. So speak about interesting experience, and this unfortunately is the dark side of climbing a high. You have had some experience with death. You've seen people fall into crevasses, and you've seen some bodies, and again, this is just an element that is uncomfortable to talk about, but it's just, part of an Everest expedition. So can you, share some of that?
Yeah, one of the first questions that people usually ask me is, "Have you seen any dead bodies?" And I think it's a fascination, this morbid fascination that people have with Everest because they hear so much about the bodies that are on Everest. And, when I was there, I only saw one person. Only is one too many. But yes, there was one person who had, a heart attack, and they put him in a tent in Camp 3. What happened with him after, I don't know, because it takes enormous amount of effort to get a person down from the mountain at that altitude. I don't know what happened to him. I have had other experiences on other mountains, like I climbed the Matterhorn in Switzerland, and 2 people fell off that mountain and just got completely, I don't know, it was a lot of chaos when that happened. Chaos because when you fall off a mountain, when you're roped in together, it's not a clean fall. It just, kinda mangles the body in a lot of ways. So that was a little disturbing to kind of witness that chaos. And, yeah, I tried Denali, and we had someone who fell off the bridge at just over 16,000 feet and fell into, 14 camp at base camp there. And that we got enormous, like, really bad weather that year, and within, matter of time, he was covered up, and nobody even knew he was on the ledge by base camp, and we had helicopters circling for 2.5 days until they realized that he was there, and they went up and did a search and recovery, not a search and rescue, and his body was just outside the tents at 14 camp because they couldn't get him helicoptered out. So he was there for 3 days lying there while we were all stuck in our tents. There's all kinds of disasters that happen on the mountains, and in a way, you get a little numb to it, which I have to be very, very mindful not to, look at this dead body and just go, okay, that person has died. You have to be like, there's a whole person behind their life story and family, and people are impacted by this. But when you're so numb to some things, it's amazing at how quickly you can go into that mindset. It's almost survival in a way. But it's kind of scary that very quickly you can go, okay, that person, like, yeah, I have to be very mindful and conscious of that. We did have someone, and I don't know if I told you the story in Lukla. We were heading back from the Everest, and we had to fly out of Lukla, and the helicopters were stuck for days and days and days. Hikers were there for 6 days. We were getting the next helicopter out. My team just come back from from Everest, and we were exhausted. We were 7 weeks on this mountain. We wanted that helicopter back to Kathmandu, and the helicopter came in with a dead body on it. And people just ran onto the tarmac and they were throwing everything off that helicopter, including the person that was in a body bag, as though it was a piece of luggage. It was a very disconcerting thing to see. But people were so desperate to get on the next helicopter to get back to Kathmandu that this this person who just lost his life was just nothing more than luggage
Just
being thrown off.
nothing more than weight on a helicopter that needed to be
Yeah.
reduced.
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad that we get to that state. But I think sometimes you're desperate. You're desperate because you're in an environment that's so extreme. And you're
Mhm.
only consumed with yourself. So I try to make a very conscious effort. This isn't about me. There's so many people on the team and surrounding that, we really do need to take care of one another. Otherwise, it becomes an extraordinarily selfish sport.
No, I agree, and I am so looking forward. I've already met my team just on a Zoom call, but I can't wait to meet everybody in person, and the bond. I mean, I've been to on other expeditions like you have. The bonding is incredible that occurs on a mountain, and you got this, like, massive, feat ahead of you that you're all trying to accomplish together. It's just it's a really special experience.
It is incredible. Yes, and there's nothing like being stuck in a tent for weeks with someone to get to know them pretty well.
I'll
You
say.
get to know everything about them in a good way or bad way. Yeah, I was stuck in when I was in Antarctica, we got stuck for 3 days in a tent at -53 degrees, and that was cold. We couldn't move anywhere, and so, when you're stuck for, a period of time, you kinda get to know one another. I got stuck in Denali at 14 camp for 12 days. You're just sitting in a tent for 12 days just watching the weather.
Wow, so that's another thing you and I have in common. That was my exact experience my first time at Denali. It was 12 days at 14 camp, and, it was I mean, I'm glad that it happened because it just adds to the entire, just your mountaineering resume and your mountaineering experience. It's just something that it's hard to prepare for. When it happens, you deal with it, and then you come out a little bit stronger as a result.
You do. I'm a little bit broken. When you're 14 at 14 camp for 12 days, your body starts breaking down. Kinda like Everest, you're gonna notice this when you get to the death zone, boy, your body starts breaking down pretty quickly, and
Mhm.
you need to get out of there as fast as possible. You can tell that your body is just not liking this.
Yep. Hopefully, we will minimize the amount of time in the dead zone, just get to the top and get out of there. So speaking of about the top, so tell me a little bit about that final day. So you've been on the mountain now for weeks. I'm assuming you finally got a good weather window, and the expedition leader said, "We're going to the top." Just, like, walk me and the audience through, like, what that final push looks like to get from high camp to the summit.
Wow. So that's a good question. It's an enormous experience. It's incredible. When we left Camp 4 that night, we left at 10 p.m. We had just climbed from Camp 3 to Camp 4 that day. We got to Camp 4 at 5 p.m. in our tents, and we were just took a small rest, changed out our oxygen, got some tea, got a little bit of soup, and then at 10 p.m. we left. And it was terrifying for me. Because you don't know literally if you're gonna survive, if you will come back to that tent that next day, you don't know if you will make it. 1, you don't know if you'll make the summit, and 2, you don't know if you'll live through it to tell. So you go on this you exit that tent and go, "I don't know what my life will be like over the next day." We left at 10 p.m. and we started climbing through the night, and we climbed through the night because that's when the mountain is, the most stable is when it's the coldest. And what they say about the fixed lines and the crowds, it was pretty slow. And it was so cold sometimes I was doing Supermans on the fixed lines trying to get my blood going through my hands and my feet. And, you would pass, a climber and that person's Sherpa, and then you would just get to the next climber and Sherpa. So you'd pass them. There was no passing anyone because you would just exacerbate the problem because you literally cannot unclip from those fixed lines. So you clip into their backpack or you grab onto their arm and then you clip into the fixed line. So it's not like you can just, hike past somebody. You can't. And then you're exhausted once you do it because it's just the oxygen depletion. It's so you feel it in your vein. And, we climbed through the night. It took me and my Sherpa 13 hours to get to the summit. So we got to the summit at 11 AM the next day. And, it's a long, long night. And, that was just 13 hours just to get to the summit. And we still had to get back. And you're not eating properly. You haven't eaten properly in 6 weeks. You can't really take a lot of water. It's going to freeze and it's in your backpack. There's no just stopping on a fixed line of I'm going to rest because you stopping everyone behind you. So you have to keep going. And it is, it's a tough journey. But eventually you come up and it's like a football field up, 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 and you see the summit way far ahead and you think, oh, and at sea level, I could walk this football field length in a matter of a minute. But on Everest, that's still another 30 minutes away. And you can see it and you can feel it. And then you finally get there. And where I felt enormous elation, I was also feeling extraordinary anxiety because we could tell that there was a storm coming in, there was snow starting to fall, and I just wanted to get down. I was exhausted. And we spent just a few minutes at the summit, changed out my oxygen. We got some food, a little bit of snacks, and then we left. And I didn't really appreciate the summit. I wish I stood up and looked around and really absorbed that moment. And I hope you get that moment for yourself and just kind of walk away from the crowds and just look out the curvature of the earth. And hopefully it's a clear day and just really absorb that accomplishment. I didn't. I was frantic.
I can imagine because you can't help but think about the Herculean effort that is still in front of you to get back to high camp. Because I mean, you just spent 11, 12 hours climbing up, and it's just as hard to reverse that and to come back down to where you started that evening.
It is. It was enormous. And so we left, and then you're taking off, and it took us 6 hours to get back to Camp 4. So it was a total of a 19-hour summit day. And it's not because we were slow, it's just the environment is slow. We actually got stuck at it was near the Hillary Step. We had a climber about 8 people in front of us who was trying to get down. It was a pretty technical, steep face and couldn't get down. So just sat there and then would look over and just sit there and sit there. And we waited almost 45 minutes. And I was freaking out because I thought we're going to run out of oxygen. Nobody was doing anything. We just sat on this very, very, very narrow ridge, waiting for this person to get up enough like gumption to get down, get off this face. You have to face forward, and on the face, you turn into the face and you down climb. And the person couldn't do it. So finally I spoke up through my oxygen mask, like, we have got to go, hurry, I know I'm running out of oxygen. We don't have more oxygen tanks. Like, if we get stuck here, we all die. And it was a panicked moment. And so I look back and go, well, it was a 19-hour summit day. And it's because people take up a lot of time. Like, you get behind someone who is really struggling, and that affects your climb. And, you hear of all these people who, die on Everest, and it's not because they are inexperienced necessarily. It could be because, the people in front of them, X amount of people in front of them have stalled, and now it's affecting your climb. It's a very, very tenuous situation up there. And you're on that precipice of, can I make it? Can I push through this? And where's my oxygen level? And it was kind of scary for a period of time. And, then we got back to Camp 4, and it is you're exhausted. You fall into the camp, into your tent, and I just slept, and you're still on oxygen.
And you're still in the death zone, so, I mean, you
You
need
are.
to rest a bit, but you still need to get out of there as fast as possible as well, right?
Yeah, we you do. We didn't get back until 5 p.m. So we, again have some tea, some rice, and slept until really early the next morning. So did quite a full night's rest, but we got some rest and then took off the next day and go from camp 4, and you go all the way down to camp 2. And it was hard though. It was hard. I was tired, and go down to camp 2. We stayed overnight at camp 2 and then just hightailed it out of camp 2 back to base camp. It was a
Wow.
journey. Yeah, 7
Wow,
weeks
wow, wow.
time
So,
in your tent.
to everybody listening, I mean, you're probably listening to this as I'm up there going through almost the same exact thing that that Louis just described. The only difference is well, one of the differences is going to be that on the north side, which is the route I'm taking, China gives out significantly less permits than Nepal does, so
Yes.
there's going to be a lot less traffic. I'm not saying there isn't going to be any traffic, so everything that you just mentioned about slower climbers, may become an issue. I hope it isn't, just because of everything I've heard about, just less people being on the north side. So, but other than that, everything you just described is probably what I'm going through at this very moment.
Yes, you'll experience a lot of it. And, I wish you all the best because, it's an incredible journey. It'll change your life in ways that you probably didn't expect. And you look back on it and, I'm really proud. That because it does take a lot of effort. It's a lot. I made a
Mhm.
commitment to myself that with one thing I do talk about is, there's so many things about Everest you can't control. You can't control the weather, your teammate, even your health. In a lot of ways, you're likely just going to get sick. The one thing that I could control was my fitness. So I made it absolutely a priority that I was going to be the most fit I've ever been,
Mhm.
that it would be easier for me. And as hard as it was, I'm so glad I was as fit because I can't imagine what it would be like to climb Everest just being moderately fit.
Sure.
And I was grateful for just that experience as well. Everything about Everest taught me a lot of lessons, and I'm really grateful for everything.
No, that is awesome, and I totally agree. I mean, when you read many of the, climbing brochures, the requirement at the bottom of almost every single one of them is, "Please show up in the best shape of your life." Because like you said, there's so many other elements that are completely out of your control, but
Mhm.
your fitness is 100% in your control,
Yeah.
and you owe it to yourself to maximize it so that you can have the best experience possible.
Yes, I tried doing that with a full-time job and traveling with a with that job. Boy, you've gotta fit in that training any which way you can. I'm training for Denali right now. I was in Chicago last week, and I got up at 4:30 in the morning to get to the gym. I live in California. It felt like 2:30 in the morning for me, and I thought, "Oh, maybe I'll take a rest day," and I thought, "Nope, there's no rest days on Denali. I'm getting up at 2:30 in the morning with a full day ahead of you. Boy, it's that sacrifice."
It totally is, it totally is. I developed my Ironman addiction while I was working, 40, not 40 was was a slow week, 60 to 80-hour weeks, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Training for a race while running a company
Yeah,
was, a Herculean feat in and of itself.
I can't imagine. You have to be wired differently, I think. You have to
Agreed.
really, really
Agreed.
want it or be really, really crazy. People think I'm crazy, but I think it's a mindset.
Same here. I get this the same stares as you do, probably. So,
Yep.
perfect segue into work, since we do all of these,
Yeah.
crazy adventures, while maintaining a career. Tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about your role as VP of US channel sales at Trend Micro. And for anybody that doesn't know who Trend Micro is, if you can just give a quick
Yeah.
explanation of who Trend Micro is.
So Trend is a cybersecurity company. So we have a platform of solutions that, for endpoint, for network, for cloud, for file storage, for any type of security that you need to secure your data and your networks and cloud. That's what we do we have a whole platform approach to help our SMB up to very large enterprise customers. The company's been around for over 30 years and has a legacy of security data that we put into AI that has really helped multiply all that we can do for our customers. My role as VP of channel sales, we have a number of companies, well, thousands of companies who sell on our behalf to end customers, and me and my team are responsible for managing those partnerships. Yeah, I've been with Trend for 10 years now. It's an amazing company. And, but it is we travel a lot on the team. We meet customers. We go to a lot of different conferences. We meet with analysts and press. And yeah, so it's quite a thrilling role. There's a lot going on in cybersecurity right now, um, good and bad. Bad because we're all really exposed to a lot of threats, to hacking, to a lot
Hmm.
of scams. And yeah, it's only getting worse. So there's a big, big market for cybersecurity.
That was going to be my next question. You just answered it. I was going to make the assumption that the cybersecurity marketplace is only getting greater just because of all of the bad actors that are out there and people succumbing to the various schemes that are being put in front of them.
Yeah, and AI is only making it worse. You hear about those deep fake videos and the AI can change, like, make your voice sound like, everything the emails you're getting look like they're legit emails. Everything looks like it's not like the olden days where you would get a scam email, you're like, "Oh, it's not spelled correctly, it looks silly, they logo nothing looks right, it's a scam email." Nowadays, it's much, much cleaner, and it looked like a legitimate email or request and you really have to think twice before you click on anything, before you succumb to anything. There's a lot of scams out there. It's a kind of a scary world.
It really is, and people that even if you when you put your organization through training, like, for instance, we were actually a victim of a scam where our CFO, incorrectly, trusted an email and provided some, sensitive information. And fortunately, our loss was limited to only $50,000.
Yeah.
And I'm working with an individual right now. His controller also fell victim to one of these scams, and unfortunately, it cost them about $1.2 million. So,
Ah, and that feeds that underground industry. When you do succumb to these, or you do the clickbait, or you're held for ransomware and you pay that ransom, it fuels that underground world. It just makes it more and more profitable. More people are getting involved in it because it's an easy buck. Very hard to trace. Not a lot of people are prosecuted for it. So I would encourage anyone, personally and professionally, just take a pause and recognize, is this legit? Is this phone call legit? This video legit? Is this request legit? And really make sure you're doing the right thing. And sometimes it's okay to say, I I'm gonna put this on pause for a
mhm.
period of time, even though there's that pressure. You have to act now, act now, act now. No, maybe it's okay to just take a step back and say, I'm gonna look into this a little bit more. I'll get back to you.
It's really unfortunate. It's basically forcing individuals to be, cynical and skeptical of
Yes.
communications that they're receiving, to really question if this is legitimate or not. And in a lot of cases, it slows down business, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, and innocent people's lives are changed. And my mom got scammed, and from that, we now have a family password. So if someone's calling urgent to say you are one of the family members, we now have a password. Well, you have to give me the family password, and only then I'll trust you in this particular situation, because it was pretty scary what people were trying to do to her. And by impersonating someone else in the family, and she believed it was real. And, it's just a quick buck gone. Money's gone right there. So we had to implement. So now if you don't know our family password, that's it. You don't get anything. We don't believe you are who you say you are.
That's actually a great suggestion. I mean, if you haven't learned anything else from this podcast, a best practice is to implement a family password before you hand out sensitive information to somebody you think is a family member.
Because that voice will sound the same. They will have information scraped from social media about that person. So you're gonna you are naturally inclined to believe that person. But if it's an urgent situation, calling for money that feels a little off, it probably is. So it's okay to say, what's that family password?
No, that's great advice. Great advice. So when you and I last spoke, you mentioned a great book that I would love for you to share some information about, blue ocean strategy, how to differentiate yourself in the marketplace. Can you share a little bit more about that book? Because I love sharing knowledge about great books.
I love the blue ocean strategy. So the blue ocean strategy is really around how to differentiate yourself in a competitive market. And it really got me thinking, how do I do things different in the same way we've always done it? So
Mhm.
really gets you thinking in a different way. And so versus going after the same customers in the same way, go like with the same amount of competition, look for what they call the blue ocean. You might be going after similar customers, but can you differentiate yourself where you are that, that there's a single person or single solution in that blue ocean trying to sell to that customer? How can you differentiate yourself amongst that crowded environment? And it really got me thinking, and it was a saying we had on the team: add a blue to everything you do.
Hmm.
Meaning, if we're going to go, like, the channel can be a pretty traditional way of going to market,
Right.
but we think about, okay, it's okay that we go to market in a similar way, but how do we add this new transformational thought process to what we traditionally did? And it could be paying our partners in a different way. It could be, how do we train them different? How do we meet them in in their environment differently, so that we're not showing up as the same old vendor? There's lots of cybersecurity vendors out there. How do we differentiate ourselves? And by thinking a little bit different and thinking, how can we transform our approach in all these different ways? Wow, it opened up a new way of thinking. And now we think, hey, how do I add a blue to everything I do? Oh, I can go to market this way. It's a slightly different. And the competition isn't there. So now I'm in this uncrowded market space. And it's a fascinating book to just get you thinking a little bit different. When you're kind of in a rut, you think, okay, well, I'm doing a really good job because this is my job, and
Hmm.
not really getting a whole lot of really good traction, but I'm doing my job because this is how it's always done. And if you change that mindset, think, well, how can I transform what I've always done to just shift that thinking a little bit? Wow, it opens up a whole new world of opportunities. So yeah, it was transformational for me and getting me to think different. So I really appreciated that part.
I love that. Add a blue to everything you do. You've heard it here. Please implement it. It sounds like it's a great strategy. Next time I'm going to do something like when I ran my company, one of the worst things I hated hearing was when I asked why we did something a certain way, and the answer was because we've always done it that way.
Mhm.
I wish I would have had this saying, why not add some blue to it? Because that that would have been a great response.
Yes, and it's okay to do things in the same way, but you have to transform certain elements of it. Otherwise, you can get stuck in a rut. And I agree. I hear that as well. Well, we've always done it this way. Therefore, it's always going to continue this way. Well, you got to get the same results. And if the results are not what you need, then you have to change something. So why not put on this blue thinking hat and go, how can I transform this? And how can I differentiate myself from the competition? And wow, it really, really gets you thinking in different ways. I loved it. I enjoyed that different element of how to think blue.
I love it. I'm gonna add it to my reading list because I need to fill up my Kindle with a bunch of books for the expedition ahead, because there's gonna be a lot of downtime. So this will be one of many books that I'm putting on my Kindle. Thank you for the recommendation. Louise, you're a wealth of knowledge on everything mountaineering, obviously everything cybersecurity and, cybersecurity channel. If anybody wants to get hold of you, what is the best way for them to contact you?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, LinkedIn obviously is, for business purposes. I would welcome any conversation. I really do try to, respond to everything, support people in the cybersecurity, support women in technology, support young people through mentorship. So LinkedIn is always the best way.
Perfect. We will put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the show. You shared some, great stories about mountaineering, some great advice on cybersecurity, and really appreciate you taking the time today.
Yes, I appreciate it. If people want to follow me on Instagram, what I'm doing. And, maybe we can have this show on the Instagram. The Climbing Executive is where I'm located. So,
The climbing executive, fantastic. I wish you the best of luck on your upcoming Denali expedition, because once you summit you will have completed your 7 summit objective.
yes, yes. So we will have to catch up when you get back from Everest and I get back from Denali. We'll have to toast. How's that?
Fantastic. I can't wait to celebrate both of those summits.
Okay, let's do it.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of Built to Finish. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, please do like and subscribe. It really does help the show, and it helps me get great guests like today's for the show. So please do like and subscribe. And if you found any of the information talked about here today useful to somebody in your network, please do share this episode with them. Thank you again for tuning in. That's a wrap for this episode of Built to Finish. Thank you for tuning in. For show notes and more details, head over to podcast.stephenpivnik.com. Special thank you to our sponsor, Acresis, offering tailored, high-impact advisory services that help founders get to their finish line with a strategic acquisition or majority investor recapitalization. Catch you next week.